and I would like to formally welcome you to Getting to Zero Waste webinar. The webinar today is presented by the MBA Green Builders Committee. I'd like to acknowledge all the hard work that the committee has put into putting this event together. In mid 2019, they identified construction waste stream as their top priority. And the initial results of that you'll see in this webinar today. So a big thank you to our team of Mike, Tara, Mary, Shane, Nate, Chris, Joe, Leslie, Nicole, and our chair, Noah, who have worked really hard on planning and putting together their videos. I'd also like to thank our partner, the Green Building Alliance, for not only partnering with us throughout the year, but having team members, Chris, Diane, Anthony, and Leslie participate today, but really leading up to this thing. And frankly, I don't think today's event would look anything like it does without all the hard work that Leslie and Anthony have put into it, especially from a technical perspective. They've been a tremendous help to us. So a big thank you to our friends at GBA. And finally, I'd like to turn it over to MBA Green Builders Committee Chair from PJ Dick, Noah Schultes.
Thanks, Eric, and welcome everybody. Leslie, go back to the GBA slide if you would. I really want to embarrass Leslie here because she's done such a remarkable job, and so has the GBA team. Eric's not kidding. Today would not have happened without them. So for that, Leslie, I think we should rename the talk going forward to your first choice, which was trash talk. So from now on, I'm going to refer to it as trash talk. So let's go to the other slide, Leslie. So why trash talk? As Eric mentioned, we had identified this pretty early on as what we wanted to get into, and it resulted from LEED 4.0 coming out. When that came out, drywall was identified as a waste stream that we had been dealing with in a way which was no longer acceptable. We had been using it as alternate daily cover, and that was no longer going to be counted as a diversion. And then when 4.1 first came out, they started having some language around certified facilities. And we don't have a certified sorting facility in our market. And so when we started to identify these gaps in our market to meet the needs of becoming a LEED certified building, we decided to tackle these issues. So, the whole goal of sustainability is to build better buildings. And, the goal of, construction waste management isn't just to divert waste, is to reduce waste. And so let's, next slide, Leslie. For those, okay, I forgot about this. Yeah, so we have an agenda today. We've got some great speakers. Chris is going to kick us off, and he's going to help us to start thinking about that transition from diversion to waste reduction. Mary Geyer is going to come in and give us the hauler's perspective, and Anon is going to talk to us from the reviewer's perspective. So we have some more videos, and then at the end we're going to have some Q&A, which I'm going to give you the questions now so that as we're talking, you can be thinking about the answers. The first question is going to be what added value today. So if there's a takeaway that you enjoyed, make note of that. The second is what could we do better next time to add more value? And then the final one is going to be, what should we focus on as a committee going forward? So for those of you who haven't met Chris, he's been instrumental in the sustainability movement in construction. He continues to be a challenging thought leader for me personally, as well as the committee. And he's the best one to help us to think a little differently about how we handle waste. So thanks, Chris, for agreeing to talk today.
Thanks, Noah. Welcome, everybody. I'm Chris Clem. I'm Vice President of Sustainability with Gendico Construction. Next slide. We've come We've developed a series of premises of which we've based this program upon. Those premises really are the way we are going to look at this program. So each of us has a contribution into this world. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We all have a role in developing the capacity and the capabilities of living systems. Human beings, we are part of this natural world. We feel that far more jobs are created through repurposing materials than discarding. And this is a great way to grow a job base, and we should be growing this job. It doesn't make sense on many levels, I think, to export materials collected through recycling programs if we can utilize those materials here. Mayor Peduto spoke last week about this, and he also said that our future doesn't have to look exactly like our past, that we can really look at a new future. Next slide. Hello. I'm an outdoors person. Anybody that knows me, I primarily spend my time outdoors. I'm either fly fishing, farming, hiking, camping, swimming, or doing work outside. I feel very connected to the land, especially the land that I live on and work. Connected has formed a great love, respect, and appreciation of the natural world. My travels have taken me to beautiful and fragile places all over the world, mostly in pursuit of fly fishing, I have to admit. But I've seen firsthand how ecosystems work and interdependence they have that makes up the workings of our natural world. Next slide. Lately, when I go to some of my favorite saltwater flats, I'm met with overwhelming amounts of debris, especially plastic debris. This debris has been blown there, dropped off a ship, or just not dealt with properly. Because when you really start to think about it, is not having the will to address your responsibility for the waste that we think. We have this term that we throw things away. Where's away? You know, sometimes it's just due to not having an awareness as to the impact of what we have, because it seems to be so small, an innocent action or an inaction. But let's look at the ways that we can begin to see paths to develop awareness and address this impact. Next slide. The way most of us are most familiar with is LEAD. LEAD helps us look at ways of addressing waste management from a do-good paradigm. It focuses on what we need to do on our project to earn points, hoping this will make a difference. And it doesn't look at the changes that need to happen within this community, that need to take place in order to build the capacity to make this something that is done just as a normal course of business. In LEAD 4.0, it broke out into a prerequisite for waste management and then a credit for waste management. In LEAD 4.1, in the November 2020 addenda, they took away this prerequisite because every project was doing waste management. So now both the planning and the execution of the waste management program are now in the credit. And you'll see here that in the planning, we really have to identify strategies about how we're going to deal with waste. So LEAD starts with asking us to think about what waste are we going to generate, either through demolition or construction, and then what are we going to do with that waste? Identify those materials, you know, structural, non-structural. Can they be reused? Can they be recycled? Can they be left in place? The last thing we want to think about is like, you know, make it our last option to put them in the landfill. Next slide. So they've revised this credit now in November, and that credit is we can get 1 point for diverting 50% of our waste. Or LEAD is now focusing much more on waste prevention. So what are ways that we can actually reduce the waste? You know, there's salvaging strategies. In the demolition phase, can we leave more in place? So there's now looking at how do we reduce the amount of waste. There's two ways to get points on here. One is to generate, instead of looking at generating, taking 50% of the waste that we have and diverting it from the landfill, can we actually generate less waste by generating less than 15 pounds per square foot or generating less than 10 pounds per square foot? And LEED allows an exemplary performance credit now that if we use a third-party verified commingled facility and reduce the waste down to 7.5 pounds per square foot, LEED will reward us an extra point for that. Next slide. So what's our responsibilities as contractors? In estimating, we need to account for how we're going to create a plan. What materials are we going to generate in demolition, and how are we going to address those, as well as those generated during construction. So from the outset, in the estimating phase, we need to think about how we're going to deal with this. We're going to spend additional time during demolition, deconstruction. Is there going to be space on site for dumpsters? Are we going to have to address waste in ways that it's going to take it far off the site? Do we have to truck it somewhere far rather than locally? Can we donate to Construction Junction? Can we recycle the doors, calling somebody like Andrew Ellsworth? In project management, we take and we detail that waste management plan even further. We look at how various waste streams are going to be tracked. Are we going to have separate dumpsters? Do we have enough room for this? Or do we have to commingle everything? But we begin to think about, packaging. How are we going to buy things that we end up with much less packaging? Locating the dumpsters is part of the site logistics plan. How are we going to get the reports? We're only going to have one hauler. We're going to have a variety of haulers. And then in the field supervision, we have to look at signage on the dumpsters if we have more than one. And then making sure that the subcontractors are going to stay on top of this. So how are we going to achieve this? Next slide. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Starting there. Can we reuse it? Can we reduce it, then recycle it? So in recycling, really look at what we have in the waste management plan. Know the designated areas for recycling. Don't start with that 50% rate. Start with 100% diversion rate. Can you hit 100%? I've hit 98.7% is the best I've done on a project, but we went for 100%. And don't look at it as trash. These are resources. This is material that can be reused, can be recycled. This could be feedstock for new material. Is there leftover building supplies? Can we reuse those? Can we donate those to somebody like Construction Junction? When we're doing temporary structures, what are ways that we can do these so that they can be disassembled and reused? Can we start to create modular construction for temporary structures or for forming that can be used over and over again? Minimize the amount of paper drawings used at job sites. Everybody, has iPads now. We can get those out into the field. And then avoiding contamination of the bins. We think about the perspective of the hauler. What is the best way we can give them that material that they can recycle more of it? Next slide. Concrete, old bricks, broken block. All of this can be crushed on site and used for structural fill. Get the engineer to approve that mix and permit that. Look at performing redundant tasks consistently in one location rather than spreading that all over the building. Cutting, shaping, tying, that really starts to keep the material. Reduce that interior construction waste, accurate cutting procedures and with accurate takeoffs. So we're not buying additional materials. Don't buy materials that we end up having to throw away or damaging. Compost lunches. Put compost bins around the project so that lunches can be composted rather than that material thrown away, because that contaminates the other materials. Reusable lunch containers, bringing your lunch to work, taking those containers home, not throwaway water bottles, reusable water bottles. Set goals for yourself and the team. Find uses for leftover concrete. Pouring stoops, pouring pads, pouring steps. I had built a project that we were doing out in Las Vegas. It was a 66-story building. And we used, there's a lot of concrete that was in the hose. And we ended up forming and pouring jersey barriers that we could use. So that, just think of creative ways of reusing concrete that you have on the project. Next slide. So we go back to that reduce, reuse, recycle. Now, that's the foundation of waste management. So let's start to think about waste in terms of why is it bad? And we think, what's the first thing we can attack? Well, what are the materials that we're throwing away that have large amounts of embodied carbon in there? Take a lot of carbon created during the fabrication process. Cement is one of them. The manufacturing of Portland cement is the third greatest generation of carbon dioxide that we have. So if we reduce steel or reduce the amount of cement that or reduce the amount of concrete, reduce the amount of cement that we use in concrete, we're reducing that carbon. Reducing the amount of steel, wood versus steel. Wood is a renewable resource and actually sequesters carbon. Reduce the amount of items that we're importing. If we're buying materials local, we're supporting a local economy, plus we're not getting into all those transportation costs and the carbon that we generate in trying to get materials to the project site. Reduce the amount of waste that's generated through packaging. Can we start to minimize packaging? We did a project that all of the casework was delivered rather than in cartons, was all delivered in furniture blankets. Nothing was damaged. There was no packaging there. We stated before, material ordering, really only order the materials that you need so you don't have waste. Think about storage, getting drywall up off the ground, absorptive materials, keeping those protected. Those, you're not throwing away materials that you're damaging. In demolition, just cutting out what we need, thinking, working with the architect and the design team to think about demolition in a way that leaves more materials in place rather than tearing them out. Composting all that organic waste, donating leftover materials, repurposing materials. Let your creative side come out and really think about what you can do with materials that are left over. Next slide. Reuse. What are salvage opportunities? We salvage buildings in whole, and only take out the parts that are damaged in there. What are ways that we can improve the materials that are on site so that they can be reused? How can those materials be used in a way that we hadn't thought of before? Reusing materials as a whole, as upcycling them, and going out and purchasing reused materials. Hear more about that a little later. How do we purchase reused materials? Next slide. Then recycle, upcycle, don't downcycle. When we take materials off to be recycled, they go through a whole nother carbon jittering. We can upcycle them by using them whole. Separate materials on your feedstocks. Don't think about them as waste. When metal studs, get all those metal studs in the bins off the floor, and so all that metal goes into a container. Again, I'm going to stress this again, separating that organic and wet materials. Make it easier to recycle than it is to throw away through bin placement, just setting up things that it's more difficult to throw something away than it is to recycle it. Next slide. Signage is extremely important. You're going to have a commingled waste on a project. Make sure people know what they can and cannot put into that. We are professionals. The MBA is a union organization. We are educated, trained professionals. We should be able to train our employees what to throw in the bins and what not. This is our training and our education is what separates us from other contractors. Next slide. Inside the trailer, signage is important in the trailer. It really starts again what AEC talked about and Shane talked about in terms of setting up that culture. So encourage items that have a recycling potential but are not suitable for a commingling bin. Make sure that those are redirected and picked up. Next slide. I'm big on the 2-bin system. You can only fit 2 bins, one large bin, one small bin on the project. Think about a dry bin and a wet bin. That dry bin, if the material is kept dry, it's much, much easier to sort and recycle that material once it leaves the site. The wet bin, you know, keeps us from contaminating all of those materials. Wet bin, next slide. Wet bin can be used for paints, drywall bucket cleanouts, sodas, drinks, water, oils. The dry bin's basically everything else. This way, we're not contaminating any of that material. Food containers, put the food containers near where the lunchrooms are, or if you have a multi-story building, people eat lunch on each floor, put it in those lunch areas. An optional third bin is strictly for concrete cleanout. The concrete can dry up and then can be crushed and recycled. So having a concrete cleanout bin is a great way to really reduce the amount of waste that we have. Next slide. Best practices. You know, a lot of us do design build work or negotiated work. Work with a design team for disassembly. What is the secondary use this building could have? Think about that. How can it be flexible? Particularly in interiors. How can we make interiors much, much, much more flexible? Set those high targets project. Before you start demolition, what are ways that you can salvage and reuse materials? You know, if you're taking off an addition, are there joists that can be reincorporated back into that project? Build time into the schedule for deconstruction. You know, look at, you know, just as we get owners to purchase long lead time materials, think about deconstruction as a long lead time process. And let's get in there and get that process started as soon as possible. Work with your waste haulers. Make sure that you are doing everything you can to make their job easier, to make them more effective. Salvage all those surplus materials. Look at ways that you can really reduce packaging on projects, accurately purchasing materials that you need. Doing on-site mixed concrete rather than, you know, trucked in concrete. If you need 5.3 yards for a pour, they'll mix and pour 5.3 yards. The other thing is you're only paying for 5.3 yards. You're not paying for concrete that you're throwing away. The costs are competitive to do that, and we're not creating waste. Addressing food waste. Prefabrication. We did the whole Tree Pittsburgh project as a modular building, and that reduced waste significantly on that project. Next slide. You know, landfills have huge impacts. You know, they're 70% of the waste in landfills is construction and demolition waste. 25% is just from commercial interiors, which can be designed for all kinds of flexibility. So we're not throwing things away. So we can have a huge impact. Next. You know, surface pollution isn't the only environmental impact. Carbon emissions are another one. We release a lot more carbon when we extract and manufacture materials for construction than we do when we salvage buildings or materials and recycle them. We spend a lot more carbon on the materials than we do in operations. 80% of the carbon in a building is the embodied carbon that comes from the extraction, manufacturing, and transportation of these materials. Reducing the amount of each of these has a direct environmental impact. The less carbon that we use, the less impact on climate we're going to have. And we're not only starting to look at the climate impacts of material. Wood is a carbon sequestering material. Steel takes a lot of carbon and releases a lot of carbon in the atmosphere in order to manufacture it. So wood studs versus metal studs. They're doing high-rise buildings now out of wood in a structural way. We need to understand that and really think about what is the impact that we have and work with our design teams to help bring down the environmental impact. Next slide. The impacts that waste has are varied and significant. You know, land excavated for waste disposal reduces tree cover for carbon sequestration. Methane released from landfills, unless it's captured and used on site, it's released into the atmosphere. Transportation of construction, exhaust from trucks. And we're essentially landfilling feedstock that could be used for manufacturing, could make new materials, reducing the amount of carbon that we have. Materials that could be repurposed in projects, helping other people that could use those materials buy them less expensively. Renovating buildings rather than raising them, working within that restriction, that limitation, that restraint that forces us to be much more creative. Next slide. When the USGBC surveyed people on what they mostly related to environmentally, only 11% associated green space with green building with living longer and happier, healthier, and healthier life. Recycling was huge. That was one of the most related ways that people looked at green buildings. We've been guilty of thinking that there's a technological solution to every perceived natural problem. We couldn't be more wrong. We know that life begets life. Technology doesn't. So we need to align with and enhance existing natural systems to heal that damage we've done and let nature work again. So reducing carbon is a huge part of that. Next slide. So what's in the works? For drywall, which kind of really began this whole conversation we started to have on waste management. There's a company, they're far away in Denver, PA, but they will come and pick up your drywall and recycle it. Two companies we're going to hear about real soon are Construction Junction, Mike Gable. It's a source of used building materials and a great place to send your excess building material. Doors Unhinged, Andrew Ellsworth. Andrew's created an amazing resource for quality commercial doors and hardware. He will take your doors off your site that you have, and he will sell you doors. This way we're not cutting down new trees for doors, not having new aluminum and glass for doors. Andrew can solve that. We're going to hear more about Andrew on that. So I'm going to leave you with one question. You believe that humans have the capability to address the ecological imperatives we face on. I truly believe that we do. I think all of you do too. So think about what you can do as part of this and the actions that you can take. That's it. Thank you all very much.
I'm Noah Sheldis with BJ Dick. A best practice to minimize waste at the start of a project is to talk to clients on demo and renovation projects about salvaging opportunities. And so oftentimes fixtures, finishes, equipment will be selected to be reused in a different portion of the project. But even if a client does not initiate it, it may be a best practice to take long lead items like terrazzo base and salvage some of that. There's some outside resources available in Pittsburgh's market that are going to share about how they can help you in your salvaging efforts.
The construction industry consumes 1/3 of the world's resources and generates 40% of waste that ends up in landfills. 20 years ago, Construction Junction was launched to turn this waste into community resources. From our location in the east end of Pittsburgh, we offer free drop-off and pickup services. We have a decon and salvage operation that will visit your job site before demolition. We will document your donation for tax purposes and LEED credits. You can also shop at Construction Junction for commercial and retail items. To find out more about what Construction Junction can do for you, go to our website, cjreuse.org, and thanks for being part of the solution.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrew Ellsworth with Doors Unhinged. Doors Unhinged is a Pittsburgh-based company that reclaims and resells commercial door systems. We recover high-quality commercial doors, frames, and hardware out of buildings being renovated and demolished. We then make those materials available as a lower-cost and zero-carbon alternative to new. We can help you in a couple of ways. First, Our no-cost deconstruction and pickup services can keep high-quality materials out of your dumpsters and out of the landfill. This can also save you time and labor on disposal. Second, we resell these materials at up to 50% less than a comparative package of new materials. We work with architects, contractors, and owners to specify and install these materials back into new projects. This is a great option for some of your smaller and budget-conscious projects. Give us a call at 412-414-9293 or find us online at doorsunhinged.com. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. That was really great. I think Leslie is pulling up some slides again, but you know, like I said, Chris has always been challenging to me. You know, we would talk about this issue of trash talk, if you will, but and we'd be talking about dumpster location or something, and Chris would say something like, maybe we don't have a dumpster in the future, and it just blows your mind to think about that kind of thing. So our next speaker, Mary Geyer. I've been working with Mary for a long time. She's a lead AP, and you know, as a hauler, that's pretty unique. She understands what it takes to get lead certification. And she's been a great resource to me. So I'm excited to hear her thoughts on best practices.
Thanks, Noah. So we are really working to try to improve the recycling options, trying to be able to expand on the amount and the types of materials that can be recycled. And I think if we can accomplish that, you know, we can have a great impact, not only on our specific projects, but also on the community. So what my team at Republic offers as a transporter is waste diversion and tracking in real time, so that you can monitor your progress by waste stream and by percent recycled versus landfills. Also, we offer sample waste stream management plans so that you can have an outline to customize your own project specific plan, assistance with any technical questions you might have, and connections to alternate options for hard to recycle materials. You know, I've worked with a lot of projects and project teams and helped a lot of folks achieve their waste management goals, but you know, we have seen a lot of changes, and as the lead specifics change, we have to adapt and move along very quickly with it. So I've seen the project teams come up with some very creative ideas. Some trends that I'm seeing now are projects starting to focus more on on-site recycling versus the commingled, you know, not only putting all of your materials in one bin, but maybe when there's room and when there's the opportunity, you can have a bin for cardboard here or a bin for metal here. And this really greatly reduces the work that's put on the recycling center. It also enhances your opportunity to boost your recycled numbers. It cuts down on contamination. This is a really good strategy. If you can ever incorporate it into your project, I think it's very effective. Also, any items that can be donated can help you avoid the landfill altogether whenever possible, if you can donate some items as well. Some of the challenges that we're seeing is the lack of a third-party verified facility. We are working with a few facilities close by to try to help them get certified. This will help them learn how to recover more material. It's going to help them learn how to better track and report more accurately back to the project teams. Also, the absence of a local cost-effective facility to recycle drywall. Drywall is just a huge impact on your project. We want to go ahead and get that recycled as much as possible. So currently we're working on those two obstacles in this group, and we're really getting some positive outcomes from it. You know, I think the more we can get together like this, learn best practices from each other, it's going to help us grow together. It's going to make your project experience better and help us further the chances of achieving your LEED project goals. So I really hope that was helpful. Thanks everyone for watching. And now please enjoy this video from Raycon.
Good morning, Pittsburgh Builders. This is Nathaniel Green on site at Carnegie Mellon University's Fifth and Clyde Residence Hall. This is a roughly 100,000 square foot project designed by LTO Architects out of New York City. Our local architect of record is PWWG. We're seeking LEED Gold certification for this project. We have some lofty goals for recycling content. Under 4.0, we are expected to hit a 75% diversion rate. One of the strategies that we've implemented to do that is to segregate our food waste. Food waste is one of the biggest contaminators in a construction load. By implementing a separate 3-yard dumpster on site, we've been able to increase our yield of our construction commingled loads by roughly 12 to 15%, which puts us solidly within our target goals for LEED 4.0. The strategy or the idea behind this is that contaminated loads, open coffee cups, drinks, spilling, food waste from lunch gets on recycled content, and it doesn't get accepted at the recycling facility. And so by keeping these in a separate container, we're able to increase our yield and have a better outcome for the project. Another thing we were able to do, this is ground up construction, so we didn't have a lot of waste early on in the project. We were able to recycle our site lighting and re-implement that into the landscaping plan. And we've also been able to scrap a good amount of metal, and we use the funds from the scrap metal to keep employee morale up and get subcontractor buy-in actually to our food waste diversion plan. So by buying lunch periodically, we're able to keep guys happy and people are recycling more, which is great for the project. Thanks for your time and good luck on your projects.
Thanks for the great video, Nate and Mary. That was a great talk. Next up, I'm really excited to hear from Eamon and 3R Sustainability. They're a LEED reviewer, and so those of us as contractors make our submissions. The documentation is a big part of what we contribute to the project. Now we're going to hear about how we can do the documentation better. So thanks for talking today, Eamon.
Great, thank you so much for having me. And it's really nice to talk to everybody. I've worked with a lot of you folks in the last decade and a half in Pittsburgh, so I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to everyone. So 3R is a consultant in the Strip District. We're right above Wiggle Whiskey. If anyone's familiar with the Strip District, we're on the 3rd floor. We are a LEED project reviewer, so there's about a dozen of us. So we spend about half our time actually reviewing, on average, probably 500 to 600 LEED projects internationally throughout the year. So when they say the third-party review, we are one of about 7 teams that do that third-party review. So there's a good chance that we've reviewed your project. So if you get bad comments, yell at somebody else. No, I'm just kidding. So I just wanted to really quickly kind of go over what we look for with construction and demolition waste management. I thought Chris did an excellent job talking about version 4 to 4.1 changes and kind of how that is. So I'm going to reinforce some of them, but also just kind of talk about the logistics behind it and kind of the red flags that when we're looking at it at a quick review level, what we're looking for to be accurately called out. So as Chris mentioned, in version 4, they started off with the prerequisite, you can see I underlined the prerequisite MRP, construction and demolition waste management planning. So the planning that goes on behind the credit, that is your construction waste management plan that you would need to submit. And then the credit is the actual diversion of the material on the site. Next slide, please. So what I really wanted to emphasize here is the prerequisite in version 4 is about the plan. There's no implementation. We're essentially just looking to see that you have the 5 material waste streams diverted. And this can actually be a tricky part that we see people kind of miss the mark on this often. So a waste stream is defined as a material that goes into a stream, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a single material is a single waste stream. I thought what would be relevant is talking about wood, for example. So we could have wood that gets incinerated for energy, that's a waste stream. Any wood product that is left over and gets incinerated is a waste stream. Wood product that goes to construction junction for reuse, as we talked about earlier, that's a different waste stream. So in theory, you could have one product, two waste streams. The opposite is you could possibly have multiple products and they become one waste streams. So if they're crushing up concrete, aggregate, any kind of rock material, that's a single waste stream. So here you're having multiple products going to a single waste stream. So it's important to kind of take a step back and think about how the product or products are being used and identifying those waste streams. So in this case, we have multiple products, one waste stream, or one product, multiple waste streams. So the goal here is just to have 5 materials diverted, and then how you're doing it is important. Next slide, please. Okay, I wanted to pull together some tips. These are kind of the do's and don'ts. I'm going to leave them on the screen and kind of look at my notes, and I apologize because it's easier for me to write stuff like this down when we're getting technical. So what we're looking for in these credits is to make sure you don't have any inappropriate materials. That's going to be hazardous waste, excavated soils, land clearing debris. I know we talked about alternative daily cover. Those are all need to be noted in your plan, but kept out of your calculations. So we want to see that you're looking at them and acknowledging them and diverting them, or treating them as they should be, but keeping them out of your actual calculations, because you can't obviously recycle hazardous materials and you can't do anything other than remediate stuff like that. The other item is not having 5 streams. I know it sounds silly because it's one of the requirements, but there's a lot of projects that if we're going to pend it, most of the time it's because they just don't have 5 streams. So recognizing that. And another thing that I actually didn't know, but now that I think about it, is when you have commingled only counts as one waste stream because everything is together with it. So you can have 100 different products all being commingled, and that only counts as one waste stream. So that's one thing to be aware of. The other item we see a lot is donations. So Andrew's great organization that he does with the doors, that's a donation, and you need to evaluate that and track that as well. Next slide, please. So getting into the actual credit, option 1 has, here's the funny part. With 4.1, in some ways they made it easier, in some ways they made it more difficult. In version 4, option 1 can give you up to 2 points. If you do 50% with 3 streams, you get a point. If you do 75% with 4 streams, you get 2 points. In version 4.1, there's only 1 point allowed for this option. So that's that. When you look at version 4.1, any project can take these substitutions, but you need to sit there and think, is this best for my project? In some cases, especially in the building materials and the EPDs and BPDO credits, it's an easy substitution. They're just requiring less materials. For this one, you do want to think, is option 1 best for my project? And if so, do I want to get that extra point? So we stick with version 4. But option 2 is absolutely better in terms of version 4.1. It went from you needed to reduce your total waste material to 2.5 pounds per square foot of the building floor area, which is very, very difficult. I just looked at my count yesterday, and I was at 150 projects reviewed this year, and I haven't seen that once. That's just almost an impossible threshold to hit. It was pie in the sky, I think. So for version 4.1, they lift that up a lot. So you can get a point for not generating more than 15 pounds per square foot, or you can get 2 points for 10 pounds per square foot. So I always tell projects that I work with, we do consulting as well, that you just kind of think about your square footage and then think about what your kind of estimated waste generated on a project is on average, and that should give you a pretty good idea of whether or not this is realistic as an option. Otherwise, I would stick with option 1. Option 1 is still in version 4 gives 2 points. So either way, you're looking at 2 points. One just might be easier than the other. I'm just looking at my notes for this. So some other things that we look at for pending is for option 2, we're looking at the total floor area. So because everything is based off of pounds per square foot, if your floor area that you're using in the credit calculator is different than the floor area that the architect, for example, is telling us, then we're going to have to pen for that. So try to synchronize. Again, with LEED, everything is about integrated design. So we want to kind of make sure that the contractor is talking to the architect, who's talking to the engineer, who's talking to the project manager. So all these numbers have to sync up, and we'll pen otherwise. Next slide, please. Great. Look at that. I covered everything I needed to in 5 minutes. I promised you, Leslie, I would do it. So thank you guys for having me. If there's any questions, there's my email. Please feel free to reach out, either related to specifically to this or to any other LEED issue. I have a decade of talking about LEED, so I'm always happy to discuss it.
That's great. Thanks, Eamon. I know we're going to have questions for you, so stay on. So next up is our final video. I want to thank Turner for putting this one together. It's a great way for us to end. So here we go.
Here in Pittsburgh at the 5051 Center Avenue project, the Turner team utilized a prefabricated penthouse to reduce the amount of construction waste it would have taken to construct the penthouse on site. The masonry contractor on the project is reusing the wood pallets that other contractors have left behind after bringing their materials to site. This has reduced the amount of pallets that have been thrown into the dumpsters. Even our own Turner employees have turned to making crafts from the unsalvageable pallets. At the University of Pittsburgh BST3 project, the Turner team has salvaged office furniture and worked with local companies such as Construction Junction to provide a new use for the reclaimed items. At MSA, the Turner team has made a team effort to recycle their own personal items from water bottles to utensils and take them to the local recycling center. The Turner construction team out in Seattle worked on the Watershed Office project, which also happened to be a living building challenge. One of the requirements of the Living Building Challenge is the need to salvage one material per every 500 square meters of gross building area. Due to the size of the project, that meant that 14 materials had to be salvaged and reused. This included items such as rough sawn wood used for concrete pours turned into decorative walls at the entry of the building, utilizing existing foundation walls to eliminate approximately 100 tons of concrete waste that would have been generated if new foundation walls were poured, and reusing existing pendant lights from the original building, just to name a few.
All right. With that, that brings us to our Q&A. So thank you everyone who put a video together or presented. That was some great information. And I'm going to turn it over to Leslie and Eric as they've been monitoring kind of the questions. So Leslie.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much to all of our presenters. I'm going to start looking at the chat here in a second, but I thought I could kick us off with a couple of questions as well. Those were all such informative presentations, and I really appreciate it. So Eamon, the first thing I want to say about your presentation is I really appreciated that you noted that none of your projects yet have pursued that waste reduction credit. That's something I've been incredibly curious about, to see if anybody has pursued it. So thank you for adding that note. My question, Eamon, is, and you can take time to think about it if you need to, but since you do review international projects, is there anything that you have seen from, other places outside of Pittsburgh in terms of waste reduction that you thought were innovative, or that, are different strategies that we should consider here?
Yeah, I think probably one of the most surprising strategies that is used internationally is the waste to fuel. We really don't use that in any manner here. I personally kind of struggle with that because often it leads to emissions when you're burning a lot of material. But other than, recycling it, instead of throwing it to a dumpster, they just essentially burn everything, which to me is surprising. It's not something we really consider here. I don't know if we can consider it for a strategy because, it requires kind of infrastructure that we don't have. But I always find that a little bit shocking when I see that they have, essentially 100% reduction because they burn everything they can't landfill or recycle.
Okay, that's a great point. Thank you. Another question that I had for all of our presenters is, I know we've talked a lot about different challenges that we're facing within our region in terms of waste reduction. It's definitely, a lot of challenges that we're facing, but I'm wondering if any of you, you can just, holler if you have something to add to this, but do any of you have thoughts on any specific strengths that we have within our region that could help us to solve this problem? Anybody want to take that one?
I'll take it. I think we have a work ethic and work base that there isn't anything we can't do. I mean, look at what we did in the early 80s, and how we completely transformed our city. I mean, we have that can-do attitude, and we have an infrastructure of being able to process materials as well here. So there are, between innovation and infrastructure, I think we have the basis here to do really anything we set our minds to do.
Thank you. I agree with that. Anybody else want to take that question? Okay. Chris Cieslak has a couple of questions. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Sure. Fabulous presentations today, really interesting. My question are for the contractors in the room. Are you finding that architects are starting to specify low embodied carbon materials? And if they are not, is there an opportunity for you guys to propose substitutions? Who's taking it? Should I call on someone?
I can talk to that. I mean, I haven't had that experience, Chris, where, that was the intention of the selection for the materials yet. But we do have opportunity for substitution. Sometimes there's a process on those projects where we can propose something. And I don't think my team has, tried to do that yet. But that's just PJ Dick.
We published. Go ahead, Don. No, Don, please.
So I think the key is for us is when we're involved early on a project and we understand the wants and needs of the owner, and if they are committed to sustainable practices, then we work closely with the design team, the architects, engineers, et cetera, to focus on those things. And Chris often spearheads that for us. And, we think about it, as Chris mentioned earlier, holistically and look at the whole project. So, but I think we have to be in on the ground floor, because by the time we get to a almost completed set of drawings, most of those opportunities, if not all of them, are gone.
As part of Gendico Construction, we have a division called Energy and Environmental Solutions, E2. And E2 is a national, an international consulting firm for sustainability. And so we have an opportunity to get involved at the very beginning of projects to start to introduce this idea of what the overall environmental impact of that project is going to be, and start to look at ways of reducing the carbon. We're also a member of the Seven Group, so we're also lead reviewers. And so we're able to take that, what we see on those projects, and bring that to bear in the consulting work that we do on projects.
Great. And while I'm still unmuted, I had another question for Mary, and that's whether or not there's been any discussion about co-locating biomass conversion with the landfills. Have you seen any of that?
Yeah, so Republic Services actually has about 73 landfill gas to energy programs right now. You know, unfortunately in Western PA, with the terrain here, we're not quite here yet right now. But you'll see it in the areas where there's less opportunity for landfill space, that they're really starting to try to get innovative there. So yeah, thanks for asking on that one.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for those questions, Chris. And I think too, based on Dom and Chris's points, reminded me of something that Chris had said in his presentation about taking an integrative approach and really identifying goals ahead of time. Andrew and Ben both have questions. Andrew, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great panel. Thanks so much to everyone. In the past, I worked in lead consulting, and there had been some questions raised about some of the haulers and the legitimacy of their operations in doing offsite separation. And I'm wondering if any advances have been made in kind of identifying who the legitimate haulers are versus those that are faking it essentially and throwing stuff in a hole in the ground and then giving you the documentation. I don't know where, it's been a good 10 years since I've been in that space, so I'm curious how that's changed.
Mary, do you want, as a hauler, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously I can't talk to other haulers. I can only talk to what we're doing. But we have the stops in place and the documentation to be able to prove back that we are not only transporting the waste from the construction site directly to the recycling center. We're having the recycling center go through and inspect the loads, break down and report back to us. And we also have a catch-all where we have our drivers visually inspect as well and write down the percentages of what waste streams were in each bin, and we're able to compare it back to what the recycling center says. Just as a second catch-all, just to make sure that, you know, everybody's being honest and, you know, we're doing our best to effectively report back to the waste streams. Now, again, that's where the certified facility is going to help and add that third step and do some better scale in and scale out so we can really get more accurate as we go. But for now, I think we're doing a pretty good job at keeping everybody honest. So thanks for that one.
Thank you, Mary. Ben, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question? I can ask it for you if you'd like. Okay, so Ben had a question about Europe has been working at multiple levels with circular economy, and I think this is a great point in terms of larger scale change. Does anybody have comments on whether or not we've started adopting that framework here, or any ways that we could? Something worth considering at least.
I think that's something definitely worth considering. And that's a whole other topic and a whole other conversation. And we can look at what role the MBA can play in that. And that would be a fun thing to look at with MBA and GBA to see how far we can expand that and what all players we need to get involved in that.
Could I actually jump in on that?
Yes.
I think this is an evolving issue, and right now a lot of the circular economy work is very theoretical. It does work on a lot of different scales, things about building, effective use of buildings, materials as services, reuse, recycling, and the whole bit. I think this is going to take a while to kind of get down into real nuts and bolts, but I agree with Chris that we should be convening more conversations about that in this region. I think there's, you know, some good precedents in other areas, and Europe is a good example. So Ben put a link to BUM, which is Buildings as Material Banks. And this idea of all the materials in our buildings are future potential, right? And so instead of thinking them as liabilities and future waste streams, let's see them as future opportunities, especially for things like reuse and understanding what materials are actually in the building. And then when it comes time to take them out, we know what to do with them. We know either where they go, what they're made of. There's a lot of concerns about red list and materials that are in them. And so the BUM framework is a really cool opportunity, but that's going to be a big collaboration between manufacturers and builders and designers and deconstructors. And so that's really going to have that multi-stakeholder collaboration.
That's good, Andrew. I think, there's some interesting things that are happening in our market surrounding this topic. I do know that, there's a state product market that's going to be coming online here shortly, an architectural products market, and that's an exciting thing. And I've been speaking with Mike Gable over at Construction Junction, just surrounding what to do with architectural glazing after reskinning a building. And with a lot of the trends in high performance buildings and passive house, that's going to become a major issue. What do we do with all the glass, once we need to replace it? Because once it's laminated and has films on it, it makes, recycling difficult. So there's a lot of conversation surrounding that. So that's a great one that, like Chris said, maybe we look at.
Yeah, that's great. Seems like it could be our next job. So Chris Cieslak has another question, and Chris, I'm going to have you unmute and ask, and then I have another question for Eamon as well, and we'll see if we get any more.
Okay, sure. And I have two questions, but I only put one in the chat. So, again, because I come at this from the 2030 district partnership, and because I work a lot with owners and facilities managers, what does the contracting community need from the owners to start to drive demand for this credit, for this work? What can we do to raise awareness and literacy on the importance of the recycling plan and the diversion plan? That's one question. And then the other question is, I did want to call out to Andrew Ellsworth. Is there, can you talk a little bit about taking the leadership in carbon reduction? We tend to focus on energy use reduction, but we're now starting to think a little bit more holistically about how that relates to carbon use reduction and changing that language and that understanding. So I just wondered if Andrew could talk a little bit about that. So two questions, one for the contracting community and one for Andrew. So.
I'd actually like to chime in on what the owners could do. Mandate it, and then be willing to pay for that as well. The people here presenting today are the ones that are being leaders and doing that in some cases on their own. But to see it happen across the industry, we do need that buy-in from the ownership to say this is a requirement on all of my projects. So that we can bring along the folks that haven't been the early adopters, like the folks that are presenting today.
So to that end, though, can you explain how do you explain and market to owners? I mean, just thinking from my background as an owner and a facilities director, time is money. So the idea of only ordering enough materials to do the job and then being short, not having enough, and having to go back out and order more materials with the lead time that it takes and then the disruption to the schedule. From my point of view, when a contractor comes to me and says, I'm going to over order so as not to disrupt the schedule, like I can get behind that, even though obviously I'm paying more for the material and then it's going into the dumpster if you're not using it or going off to Construction Junction. So how do you make that case that, look, I'm only going to order exactly what I need, but please know that there's a risk involved that will affect the schedule and the labor, and who's going to take that risk at that point? Because I think owners are going to be hard pressed to do that.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I see their side, but you asked how they're going to do it. It is a double-edged sword, of course.
Right.
And which end do we push in on?
Yeah,
I wish I
because
had an easy answer. I wish I had an easy answer we could put up on a webinar here.
yeah,
No,
unless
you got
magically
anything?
the cost of disposing of it and the cost of the labor to wait for it is less than the cost of the material itself. I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That's where we end up usually, right?
Well, it's because you said time is money.
Right.
And money is one form of capital, but there
Mhm.
are several forms of capital out there. We tend to only focus on one. I mean, the other capitals that are out there are the community, the earth, our customers, other stakeholders that are involved. And we arrogantly discount all of them, saying it's all about me.
Mhm.
And when we have an attitude that it's all about me, it only really has one end. We only need to look around to see what end that's starting to become. So we've got to really begin to educate ourselves on how the actions we have affect other forms of capital. Well, first we need to understand that there are other forms of capital, and then how do our actions affect them, and what is it that we can do that actually improves that level of capital so that it improves us. If as a developer, we build our building that has a negative effect on the neighborhood, then ultimately the value of that building is going to be decreased. But if we build in a way that enhances the value of that neighborhood, then that asset grows in a greater way and continues to grow and continues to provide us the clients that we need in order to make that happen. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people in charge that have very little understanding outside of what's just right here for them. And we've got to spend time educating them and letting them be aware of that. It amazes me that people that live disconnected to the land have so much influence on what happens to the land.
Thank you, Chris. I think a good question moving forward is how to sort of operationalize that that concept and how to make it work. Chris, did you want to get your last question answered by Andrew? And then we'll go to Eamon for a final question before we close out Q&A.
Sure. Chris, I appreciate you bringing this as an opportunity to mention. So there's an organization out of Seattle area called Carbon Leadership Forum, which is basically trying to tackle the issue of embodied carbon. And Chris Clem kind of mentioned this in the intro, that we have, I think 10% of carbon emissions are associated with building operations. When we look upstream, we have basically another 10% of CO2 emissions attached to manufacturing of building materials. And so that's the embodied carbon, the carbon it takes to make those materials and get them to the job site. And so that becomes a big issue as we're kind of hitting a building boom. Whereas operational carbon is spread over the life of the buildings, the embodied carbon is all up front. And so all the buildings that are going to be built over the next 20 years, we're going to feel those really soon. So we need to really start thinking strategically about how we're going to reduce that. And there's the big materials I think Chris mentioned, concrete, steel, aluminum, and then you can go down from there. And there are opportunities within all of those to reduce the amount of carbon going into them. And so there are a variety of Carbon Leadership Forum is kind of the clearinghouse of research and activity. They also have chapters around the country. We're now starting a Pittsburgh chapter, myself and Alex Coe from the Living Future Hub. And so very early on, but we're starting to really kind of put the pieces in place to get content and get people connected so we can really start to make some of those substitutions and kind of get more low carbon products into the market and into the project. So stay tuned. We're going to be reaching out to try and get people involved and would love to partner with groups like GBA, MBA, Code, and whoever else wants to be involved. So appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. Thanks.
Thank you, and thanks for those great questions. I had one final question for Eamon, but I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Is there anything else, Eric or Noah, that you guys wanted to cover? Good. Okay. I know we're about to close out here, but Eamon, I wanted to see if you could talk for like just a moment about True, because you mentioned it in the chat. And then also if you have quick tips for how folks can determine between LEED version 4 or 4.1, just real quick. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Leslie. So for just to jump on the LEED one real quick, any 4.1 substitution, I would recommend you look at the options that you're going to pursue. Some credits, I would say 90% of the credits have got easier under 4.1. But for example, with construction waste management, option 1 has reduced the point threshold. So if you're just doing diversion to a landfill, option 1, I would do LEED version 4, because there's 2 points available. In 4.1, there's only 1 point available. If you're looking at it by the square footage reduction of waste, I would do option 2, and I would do version 4.1. That's a no-brainer. I mean, you're making it essentially 4 times easier for 1 point. Now to jump back to True, True is a system that was designed by GBCI, and there's very few True advisors right now, but it kicked off about 2 years ago. And what they're doing is, this is existing buildings. So this is your day-to-day operations. And they're looking at not only how you're reducing waste from your employees and your how you're running the building, but also from the material you're pulling in. So they're looking at upstream and they're looking at downstream. It's very holistic, but it's very, I would say very well done in that it's very accessible. It makes sense on how they're doing it. And they treat it similar to LEED, as in there's components and credits, and then you essentially get a score associated with it. So I would recommend everyone to check it out. At the very least, going through the process of becoming a True advisor was very useful to me. We've since done waste audits for ourselves, for some of the larger corporations around Pittsburgh. And it's been very useful to kind of, instead of just thinking about recycling as the end all within the corporation, it's looking at the full cycle of everything. So I would recommend everyone to take a look at it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Leslie.
I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to pull our slides back up here. All right, and then we'll go back to Noah.
Oh, yeah, well, thank you, everyone. This was a great conversation. I definitely had some takeaways from it. So it's always good to, have a forum to talk about these types of things. But, the MBA's Green Builders Committee, we're working together to solve some of these challenges. And if you have interest, if you're an MBA member company, and you don't have representation on the board, let me know. We'd love to have you. And, one of the takeaways that we wanted to highlight that we keep talking about is that, it's a moving target. As we learn how to build better, we need to up the bar. And so the addendum that everyone keeps talking about that just came out last month, we're still digesting and still trying to understand the impacts of, but, if we do get a certified facility, like Chris said, that's going to give our market an opportunity for an exemplary point when it comes to utilizing that facility. And then, at the end of the day, we're all about adding value to our clients' projects. I think it was Dom that said, if we get involved early, we understand the client, what they need, and we're able to embody that and to make recommendations based on that. And that's what we want to do as builders. We want to be an extension of our clients to help them build the best buildings that they can. So with that, thanks everyone for attending. If you have further questions, let Leslie or me know. And then, like I said, we have 3 more Menti polls that we want to conduct. And so the first one, in the heart of continuous process improvement, I want to find out what you found value from today. What was good about today. So if you could get back on menti.com and fill out, what was valuable.
Gonna be the same code, and you can use more than one word here. So if you just type in what you thought. Right, there we go.
A lot of lead updates. Something with those, the addendums are optional. 4.1, as we've mentioned, isn't, you know, you're not certified or registering projects under it yet.
That's great. I love that somebody appreciates the optimism too. Me too.
Yeah, a lot of these conversations are a little dark.
This is great feedback. Thank you, everybody. You want me to move on to the next one, Noah?
Yeah, it looks like we've got a pretty good population there.
Okay.
And so if you refresh your Menti app or whatever you're in as Leslie moves forward. So, you know, we want to continue to get better. And so if there's something we could do better for next time, you know, one for me is I'd love to be in person.
In person and bring food next time.
Oh, you remember, you know, eating food together?
Oh, great. Somebody's mentioning case studies. That's a great idea.
That's a good one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Case studies. Great, 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 great.
Leslie is a great host.
Guys. Awesome. Okay.
Pittsburgh initiatives.
I love it. These are all things we can do in the future. Okay, perfect. That's excellent feedback. Should we go to the final one and then we'll let Eric make some final announcements?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. I think there's one more. Make sure we don't miss it. Ooh, more advanced. Let's go deeper. Okay. Great. Okay, I'm going to go on to the final one. I think there's one more. Here we go. This is the big one.
All right. So next year we need a topic. We haven't started in any direction yet. So Green Builders Committee, you know, our mission is to educate our membership and, you know, the best practices. So if there's a hot topic that, you know, as owners or designers or, you know, whatever your profession, your perspective is, you know, we would love to hear how we could better educate our membership on being prepared surrounding whatever topics. Yeah, indoor air quality is a big one.
Oh, yeah.
We're having lots of conversations with clients about that, PJ at least.
Excellent. These are great things for us to take on as a committee.
That could be, yeah.
Another IAQ. Ooh, plastics. We have a lot of work to do. Okay, I'm going to give it one more second here. Any more recommendations? Ooh, ultimate cost benefit. Well, living building challenge.
We can do that one.
Yeah. This is great. Thank you, everybody. All right, and always feel free to email us if you have ideas later.
Yeah, that's great. So, well, again, thank you, everyone. And I'm going to let Eric close us out.
Thanks a lot, Noah, and thank you, Leslie. I want to give a big thank you to everyone that attended today, everyone that put this together from the Green Voters Committee, as well as our partners at GBA. Thanks once again to them. I know we're a couple minutes over here, but just 2 quick announcements that are MBA related. Our report to members was published yesterday. So if you can go to mbawpa.org, we have that report to members right on the front page. And while you're there, you can sign up for our next webinar. It's not a green voting webinar, but it's certainly something that'll be of interest to most people out there. Thursday, January 7th, one of our affiliate members, Burns White, Matt Jameson here in Pittsburgh, as well as some of his colleagues from around the country, are going to be presenting on key issues in creating a COVID-19 vaccination policy. So I think that's a not to be missed webinar. And again, you can see that as well as the annual report on mbawpa.org. So thanks again to everyone. And I hope you enjoyed today's webinar.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks to all of our speakers.